If the first days of 2025 are showing us the future, it's going to be a tough year for trading. But that's why we're here, to make sense of things. Like, subscribe, and let's get things sorted. So first of all, before we dive into the graphs and try to understand what happened, what's happening, and what will happen in the stock market, it's really important for me to get your feedback on the overall visuals, because I've received a lot of comments that the previous visuals were too colorful, not clear enough, and hard on the eyes. So I changed it up. I'm taking your feedback into account. There's no such thing as bad feedback. We're all learning, and that's why I make these videos, to give you the best and most accessible information, and of course to ensure good sound, good visuals, and a good picture. So let me know in the comments below what you think. Any feedback? There is no such thing as bad feedback. Let's head to the graphs. Let's see what the SPY has brought us in the first few trading days of 2025. This is how it looks on a weekly basis, and this is how it looks on a daily basis. Notice that if we zoom out for a moment and look at the SPY since November, we've been stuck for 2 consecutive months. It's not just January. It feels that way because we've been in the same place for 2 whole months. The SPY is trading water. Notice 575 now. This is the support. We can take let's take the last 21 weeks, and we definitely see that this whole area around 581, 582 is a very important support zone. We closed the weekly with a bearish candle with a close lower than the low of the previous week. What does this mean? Short term, SPY daily in a downward channel. In December, many gaps down, most closed. Now a gap remains, stuck like a bone. At 575, gap must close. Faster it closes, more strength returns, as in 2024. Now, short term, bearish trend, rating C. Long term, bullish, rating A. Understand time frame and hold duration for S&P 500 and stocks. That's why FTI exists, to counter bias from news and information. This leads to confusion, poor decisions, and losing sight of information. FTI, with a button push, ignores all. It's crucial to know the trading time frame and how long to hold stocks, including the S&P 500. The FTI helps avoid bias and confusion from news and information overload. It prevents poor decisions by focusing solely on the graph, ignoring external factors. The FTI analyzes the graph in any set time frame, whether daily, weekly, or minutes. And that leads to sensory confusion, which causes us to make poor decisions. And in the end, we also lose sight of the information we receive based on how we want things to go, based on what we want to happen. This is something that must not happen to us. And that's why the FTI, with the push of a button, ignores everything. It doesn't care about news. It doesn't care about anything. It just looks at the graph. It doesn't even know how to read what's written behind it. It just analyzes the graph in any time frame you set for it, whether it's daily, weekly, 5 minutes, or 15 minutes. It doesn't matter. Take a look at the RSP, the ETF that gives equal weights to each stock in the S&P 500. It closed the week, not surprisingly, just like the S&P 500, down 1.4. Now 173 is support, still rated a bullish in the long term. In the short term, it's rated A in a long trend. What that means is that the bears are slowly starting to gain strength, but it always comes from lower time frames and gradually builds up until it starts breaking the higher premium tiles. As of now, In the short-term report, there's this gap at 172.29. The bears are also in control in the short term for QQQ with an A rating for a bullish trend in the long term, and the bullish breaks are still in control. Note that QQQ has been moving sideways since the end of November, since the week of November 25th, for 6 weeks now, sitting at 504. This is a breaking support level below, and we are going to close this gap at 492. The Dow Jones is down 1.8% in weekly closes, breaking below and closing under the lower boundary line of the yellow area, continuing to decline, and we are on our way to 411. In the daily level, note that in the shorter term there's also an A rating for a bullish trend. What does that mean? In all the important and major indices, the bears are starting to gain more and more strength as time goes on. Pay attention to this red trend line. If you've been following me enough here on YouTube, you know this red trend line, and we've been talking about it for a long time. And here, the Dow Jones first of all closed this gap here, which is a positive thing. Now, it continues. As long as it doesn't break down, it will keep sliding down along this trend line. If this trend line breaks, we are on our way to this lower trend line, which could lead us, as of now, to close the gap at 398. Hi Debbie, the day it closed the week, down 3.04%, rated B in bearish. Note that besides the FTI giving us real-time data, it also helps us look and get a snapshot of what's happening in other time frames. Of course, you can change this according to the time frames you trade in. I like to look at the 15-minute, the 65-minute, the 4-hour, and of course the daily. In higher time frames, if I look at a weekly chart where each candle represents a week, then I can obviously look at the weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly. And that's how the FTI wraps everything up for me. What's happening in real time, what's going on in lower time frames, and what's happening in higher time frames. It gives me a sell signal. Everything, of course, this also works for crypto. Note that Ethereum, as of now, has just under 2 days left until the weekly close for Ethereum and crypto in general. Right now, it's at 31.33, which is the support level. A break below that would take us to 2900 and back to 2577 on the daily level, 3100. The tail we've been talking about since December 20th is closing in, and then 3095 is what's called the last line of defense for Ethereum. Otherwise, we're on our way back to the area of 2470. Bitcoin on the weekly level. Let's take a moment to zoom in on the weekly. Pay attention. Since November 25th, there hasn't been much movement here. After 3 crazy weeks during November, we are currently facing 6 weeks of stagnation. This whole area now around 92. Note that this is also the stop loss at the weekly level, needs to be maintained. Otherwise, we're on our way to 87 and back to the 80 area. On the daily level, 91.430 is a super important support area. If that breaks, we're on our way back to 74.760. The Magnificent 7 closed at 2.1 on the weekly, which isn't surprising, and it still maintains a trend line of higher lows. That's why it's still rated A in a bullish trend in the higher time frame, in a long-term trend like the S&P. And I want, as a trader, not to think. I'm a person. I'm driven by emotions. In trading, being driven by emotions is the worst thing there is. And that's why there's the FTI, which with the push of a button gives you everything. Note a trend line of rising lows. Now I will wait, just like what happened here once in August, when he reached this trend line and received the base signal a day or two later. And I will wait for what happened here, what happened in November, when it reached the trend line of rising lows. It got the buy signal. Even here, I still won't enter a long position. I will wait. If it happens, it's uncertain, but I know what to expect. To identify the perfect dip, Nvidia in the long term is upward, but short term, last 3 trading days show nothing bullish. Hence, FTI rates it as rating a bearish. Nvidia, notice, in the long term, is in an upward trend. But if we look at the short term, pay attention to the last 3 trading days in Nvidia. There's nothing bullish here. And that's why the FTI rates it in the short term as rating A in a bearish trend. Why should we wait? We're going to wait to find support on this lower trend line of rising lows. And then, just like what happened here, a few days later we got the buy signal. A few days later we got the buy signal. A few days later we got the buy signal. Now let's wait to see if it happens again. The FTI, ladies and gentlemen, is the tool. If you really want to make money trading, if you want to understand what's happening at any given moment, and it doesn't matter what you're trading or what time frame you're trading in, the FTI in the most accurate way possible. There's no system more accurate than this. Because it's a system. It's not an indicator. All the indicators, you know my opinion on them. Everyone follows the price. Everyone shows you what happened. But I'm driving forward. If I want to move ahead, I can't keep looking in the rearview mirror all the time. Occasionally, I take a glance to see what's happening behind me, what's happening on the sides. But I'm driving forward, and all the indicators are just the rearview mirror, the FTI. These are my signposts for the future, whether they're traffic lights or various markers. And based on that, I make decisions on how to continue my journey. In the stock market, notice the trend line of rising lows, exactly the same. Every time Microsoft reached this point, there was a buy signal after 1, 2, or 3 days. Buy signal, buy signal, buy signal, buy signal, buy signal. Will it happen this time as well? We don't know. We can only look back and wait and understand that if the FTI gives us the buy signal in the next day or 2 or 3, in the upcoming trading days, I can rely on it because it doesn't miss. Google, which doesn't look good, is starting to look bad. Notice it's reaching the upper edge of an upward channel. And every time it gets there, it receives a pullback, pullback, pullback. Are we getting a pullback now as well? Google declines at 187. Amazon, like the S&P, is in an upward channel, often triggering buy signals. Will. Rating C in a bearish trend. Amazon is continuing. Notice there are 2 channels here. The red channel is one I drew for the short term, and the longer channel is the one the FTI gives me. Notice Amazon, just like the S&P, just like all the other major stocks we've gone through, is in the long term within an upward channel. And Amazon, every time, it's the same story. A trend line of rising lows. It touched it. And shortly after that, a buy signal. Will it get this buy signal again this time? Even though right now, it received a sell signal upon touching. What does that mean? Even though right now, it received a sell signal upon touching. What does that mean? This means that if we keep breaking, and if we break this trend line here, we're on our way to closing the gap at 214.40 and the gap at 208. And in the gap at 208. Heart down. There's a broadening formation here. What is a broadening formation? The pattern shows how the price moves, right? The price moves in zigzags. And this is what gives us broadening formation, an upward trend line of highs, a downward trend line of lower lows. We're still inside an upward channel, but we got a rating. We're still at an A rating in a bullish trend. Pay attention below with all the news she had on Friday. Notice that this candle, which is really not pleasant, 593, and this area of the lower trend line needs to be maintained. Otherwise, we will continue to slide along this red trend line. Tesla, which ended Friday almost at zero, is holding on by its teeth to a long-term trend line of higher lows, a rating in a bullish trend. Don't try to look for the dip as long as there's a rating in a bullish trend. Now pay attention to AVGO, which also looks bad. It received a sell signal last Friday with the next support around 215 and below that at 204. The gap from its last earnings report in December is closing. Pay attention to AVGO, which also looks bad. It received a sell signal last Friday with the next support around 215 and below that at 204. The gap from its last earnings report in December is closing. AMD, which that's enough. Not getting a moment of relief here, and it just keeps falling. It simply keeps falling. Notice we're in a downward channel, a rating, bullish trend. Rated A, bullish trend. Nothing happening with AMD. Netflix, which on Friday collapsed, down 4.26%, going back 2 months. We talked about how there's a multi-top here. We mentioned that this whole area around 875 must hold as support. Otherwise, all this rise will just get wiped out. 426% down, going back to 2 months. We talked about how there's a multi-top here. And we mentioned that this whole area around 875 must hold as support. Otherwise, all this rise will just get wiped out. Are we on track to close the gap at 705? Right now, that's the way. A rating, a bullish trend. Palantir, which ended Friday down 142. Palantir, on the weekly chart, pay attention. In the past week, it's just waiting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks were wiped out. In 1 week, 63 is support. Below that is 57. Below 57, friends, all this rise we saw in November will be wiped out. Don't say it won't happen. Don't say it can't happen. They also said that this meteoric rise of Palantir in 2024 couldn't happen. The price loves to return to areas it has visited in the past, especially with this gap around 42. C, rating, bullish trend. And if you're still holding some of the stocks we've talked about so far, and you're trading them in the short term of days or weeks, most of them, the stop loss should have been hit a long time ago. I'm talking about stop loss, which is the only thing we have full control over. Stop loss, we don't know what will happen in the next candle. Not tomorrow, not next week. Unless you have 8 years of experience, then yes, many times you can find the dip, like I showed you on Discord. But most of us don't have that experience. We don't have the time for this screen. We also don't have the time to sit on this because we're working another job, and that's okay. And that's why we use stop losses. As they say all the time, even in all my lesson plans, the first lesson starts with risk management, stop losses. And still, I'm getting comments on YouTube, on Discord, and on Twitter asking why I didn't set a stop loss. Come on, why didn't I set a stop loss? My profits are gone. I'm not just saying this for fun. Stop loss is important. And anyone who tells you that stop loss is nonsense and that you don't need it because in the end, the price will go up. Yes, but in the meantime, it's going down. Isn't it a shame? All the profits from Palantir are currently down 23% for me. Shopify is continuing to drop as well. Pay attention. It has a doji here now. It ended Friday with a doji. Is this going to be dry? In the meantime, it's going down. Isn't it a shame? All the profits from Palantir are currently down 23% for me. Shopify is continuing to drop down. Pay attention. It has a doji here now. It ended Friday with a doji. Is this going to be dry. We're talking about some kind of trend reversal. Notice that this is also a doji on a trend line. Is this signaling a short bounce? We don't know. It has an A rating on trend banish. And there's this gap at 93. MicroStrategy. Notice how it's stuck to the trend line. We talked about this downward trend line. And as long as the price of MicroStrategy is stuck to this downward trend line, the path is down. The gap at 280, we've talked about it a lot, and it's going to close. It hasn't closed yet, but it's going to close. And don't forget to turn on all notifications, because we have more top stocks. Regarding the list of stocks to buy, or for shorting, or going long, what we call buying and selling, make sure to turn on all notifications, because it will be posted on Sunday, along with more and more videos. So, click on the like button, click on subscribe, and join over 6,200, almost 6,300 subscribers on our YouTube channel, Fibonacci Traders. I upload every day, not just the technical analysis, but also what's happening with very interesting stocks behind the scenes. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, give it a like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications. Check the links in the description below. I promise you will find what you're looking for